problem. Fire away.
My guest today is the man of 1,001 voices. Yes, that's a shot at Mel Blanc, but the reason so many of us had a great childhood, he's a legend, an icon, and a national treasure. He is Mr. Rob Paulson. Rob, how are you?
Well, I am breathing and not in jail, Julian, but the day's not over yet. So far, so good, buddy.
Hey, man, so everything's coming up Millhouse to an extent, right?
That's right. Yeah, no kidding.
So, a little side story. I just wanted to tell you this before we get into, the questions or the talk, whatever you want to call it when this releases on this podcast. So my kid, I got a 10-year-old son, and he's really into karate right now. And a lot of that has to do with my affection for the Ninja Turtles. And
Oh, great.
we really started to bond. I was a Navy guy for about 7 years, and I got out. And it was very hard assimilating back to civilian lifehood and then, trying to find common ground with my son. And I tried, with the Turtles that I grew up with, Mine, sadly, wasn't that 87 series. It was that first 90s movie. But when that door was opened, it was nothing but Turtles, from there on in. So
How about that?
he asked me today, he's like, who are you talking to today? And I said, oh, I'm talking to Rob Paulson. He's like, who's that? So I named off the voice, and Donnie instantly clicked with him. But he got a huge pop when I told him you were the voice of Carl Wheezer, and he hit me with that, are you going to finish that croissant line? And I almost died laughing.
I'll tell you what, firstly, thank you. Your son obviously has excellent taste.
He does.
In cartoon characters. Thank you. That is such a humbling comment and compliment. There's something about Carl that people really love. I don't know what it is, but look what happens to you, Julian. It's just kind of freaky when I ask people if they want to finish that croissant. It is what you are doing right now, and what you're able to share with your beautiful boy is the best part of my gig. I've gotten to a place now where I've been in LA for 40 years doing. I came out here ostensibly to do live action and music, and I was, and then the opportunity presented itself to do animation, and boy, am I glad that I took that turn, because when it happened, all I wanted to do was keep working and being creative. But it didn't take me long to realize what a great gig it was, and boy, was I right. Down the road, here we are, all these years later, and the connections with Ninja Turtles, Carl, Pinky, Yakko, Rick and Morty, the Tick, The Mask, Darkwing Duck, all these shows I've worked on are multi-generational. And the exactly what you talk about, sharing it with your boy, that is, I don't even know how to put into words what that means to me, not only as a performer, because it obviously means that people are paying attention and they enjoy the work. And man, I don't draw them and I don't write them, but when it works, it is nothing short of magical, and it is transcendent. It lasts forever, and it crosses generations, and you and your boy are the proof in the pudding. So, man, you've totally made my day. Thank you.
I mean, it's the least I could attempt to do. I mean, like I said, I turned 31 this past August, so it's been nothing. I've said it numerous times on this podcast. There's a few things that I'm not just super passionate about, but I can talk and just wax poetically about. Food being one. I'm a chef.
Yay.
The second thing is cartoons and movies, and the third thing was always comic books. And
excellent.
You have hit, and I'm going to hit you with some deep cuts on some of these names, because when I was sitting here looking at
Great.
all of your body of work, one or two really stuck out. And growing up, that 90s era of that cartoons was really late 80s, early 90s, in my opinion, was that golden age of cartoons. What I think for me, it just it sparked something. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was just me just trying to veg out as a kid or whatever it is, but you had me hooked when I found out it was Rob Paulson as Raphael, Rob Paulson as Pinky. You played PJ in the Goofy movie,
Oh, yeah.
I
love him, too. He's a big old guy, but he sure loves his friend Max.
What is Thanksgiving like with you? That's what I want to know.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, you can imagine. Once Yakko gets a couple of pops in him, it's going to be pretty fun. Look, my son's only a bit older than you, and he was a turtle freak. And as you can imagine, it was nothing short of miraculous to be able to have a little boy who loved Ninja Turtles, and for him, by his own account, the same thing for a little boy with his old man being Raphael. And I think I'm pretty docile at home. I probably used to be a little more of a table jumper honor, lampshade guy, but I've calmed down a lot, and that is due in large part to the fact that my wife is very good at saying, look, lovingly, kindly saying, okay, it's time to rope it in, because my gig requires my ability to access my creativity kind of at the drop of a hat. And sometimes it's difficult for people who are a little bit nutty, and then they get paid for it. And boy, once you start pouring gas on that fire, sometimes it's hard to rope those folks in. So I have fortunately found a way to, with my wife's help and my son's help, to be wacky when needed to be and always be in a good humor, but, be able to be an adult. So, yeah, the holidays used to be pretty nutty when my kid was little, and great fun when he would have friends over. Going to the drive-thru and asking for 37 Big Macs as Yakko Warner when they had Animaniacs Happy Meals, or calling the Domino's pizza guy to order pizzas as Raphael, and they would start to come over and visit, whether I ordered a pizza or not, because they just wanted to bring their friends and say, dude, this guy's Raphael, It was just huge fun, and it honestly, it never gets old. I realize, and I totally understand how fortunate I am, Julian, and I just love the fact that I'm blessed with this incredible gig, and all I have to do is say, Narv, and you do that. I mean, it's just, it's wonderful. So, yeah, I'm a lucky guy.
No, I mean, you say you're a lucky guy, but us fans are equally as lucky, if not more. Like I said, you've had so many of these voices. Major Glory from Dexter's Lab. You had Pinky from Pinky and the Brain. You had Hard Drive, and this is a cartoon that I think does not get the love and attention it needs. And you actually did some voices with old Barry Gordon with SWAT Cats.
SWAT Cats, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of those cartoons that me and I got a younger brother. He's 2 or 3 years younger than me, and it was. Do you have a brother?
I do. I have a brother who is 2 years younger than I.
Okay, so you have that sibling rivalry, growing up, especially being a guy, all that testosterone flowing and all that other stuff.
Sure.
But there was one thing that we always sat down to back in those early to mid 90s, even when they were doing those reruns and when they tried the relaunch. But SWAT Cats was one of them, and we never ever missed you as Brunch and the Reluctant Werewolf, or Shriko and Scooby Doo.
Oh my God! Yeah.
And
Scooby Doo, yeah.
What was it like working with the cat? Did you get to sit down, or have you got to sit down with Frank Welker and everybody like that, or Don Messick?
Oh yeah, Frank is one of my. He lives literally 3 miles from me.
Mm-hmm.
I've known Frank for 37 years, I guess. Yeah, Frank is one of my dearest friends, and as you know, in your audience, just a profoundly gifted guy.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, as a matter of fact, by and large, the way the cartoons that you just mentioned, the way in which they were virtually all recorded was the actors were all together, and it was nothing short of wonderful every single time. And if you're lucky enough to do a show like Turtles, you do a couple hundred of them, and over a span of, 8 years, and you work with people whom you would choose to be your personal friends, and they become your personal friends. I don't even know how many times I've been at Frank's house and vice versa. And it's the same thing with Mark Hamill, with Kevin Conroy, with Maurice LaMarche and Tress MacNeille. These are all people who would show up at my kid's birthday party, you know, and you're together with marriages and divorces and bar mitzvahs and christenings and deaths. And I mean, it really is. I work with people who are my very best friends in the world. It just so happens that they're Billy West and Nancy Cartwright, and you know, you kind of go down the line and think, holy smoke, I could take 10 of the people on my phone, and they were responsible for 15 or 20 world-class, culturally iconic characters.
Oh, yeah.
And responsible for literally joy to hundreds of millions of people around the world. And it's not lost on me, Julian. I take the fact that they're here in Hollywood for granted because it's where we live. But I never take their friendships and their incredible talent for granted, because I can work with. I just talked to Billy West the other day for the first time in a few months, and we're on the phone for an hour. I got off the phone just utterly enervated, just excited. I thought, oh my God, I've heard this guy. I've worked with this guy a couple hundred times, and he starts riffing his Zoidberg, and it just, I go, oh my God, this guy's just from another planet, and he's better at 70 than he was at 50. I mean, it's just mind-blowing. Same with Mark Hamill. You know, we all know about saving the universe with Luke Skywalker, but he was the Joker for 20 years. And for my son, who's a Batman nut, his Batman is Kevin Conroy, and his Joker is Mark Hamill. Period. End of story.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so, yeah, it never gets old, and we always prefer to work together because it makes everybody better. A high tide raises all boats, you know?
Now, it's funny, you said, you know, there's three voices or three people that I really wanted to you know, just expound upon. And Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, we'll talk about those first two. So when...
How about those guys, yeah?
I was younger, you know, it was always Ninja Turtles and Batman. There was three vehicles that I wanted as a kid. The Turtle Van, the Batmobile from the animated series, and then the DeLorean at the end of the first movie from Back to the Future when he gets the Vegematic on there. So I don't have to sit here and try to steal plutonium, you know, and get shot and stuff, right? So, you know, when I read comics now, and I still go every week to get my comics, Batman is always on that list, Turtles is always on that list, and a few other titles, but those two always come to the top of my list. And when I read these comics, I hear Kevin Conroy. You know, I am Vegas, I am the Knight, I am Batman. Then I hear Mark Hamill's Joker. Before that, you know, Jack Nicholson scared the living piss out of me. And this is very campy now. You go back and watch it now. It's very campy considered in today's climate and today's time. But Mark Hamill made me really fall in love with that character. You know, who's ribbing who, like who's elbowing who, like, hey man, you do a voice whenever you pull through first, or whenever you guys get together, who's usually the first person out of you three that'll start dropping voices or start pulling characters out of their hat?
You know, it's pretty difficult to ignore Kevin. His countenance and the literal vibe of his voice is so grand. It's just wonderful, and he just, hey Rob, how you doing? I mean, I can't possibly do it. But I had Kevin on my podcast when I was doing it on camera for Nerdist a couple of years ago, and I had Kevin on with Paul Dini and I forgot I'm spacing the producer.
It's
Batman, Alan Burnett.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I had Alan and Paul Dini and Kevin, and it was just wonderful. We read a scene at the end of the piece, and it's available online. You can go to YouTube and just put Rob Paulson talking tunes, Kevin Conroy, and it'll pop up. And we did the scene at the end of Dark Knight, where Commissioner Gordon, Gary Oldman, is like, you know, we lost. The Joker won. Yeah. And that little wonderful speech where, you know, sometimes you think this, sometimes, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm telling you, man, I just played the, you know, Gary Oldman part just straight because it was all about Kevin. But holy shit, when he started ripping, what's really wonderful, Julian, is when the camera pulls away at the end of it, there's about 3 or 4 seconds of silence, and Paul Dini, who created Harley Quinn, and
yep.
was, you know, obviously one of the stable of Emmy-winning writers on that show. When they pull back, and I'm just transfixed, and Kevin, of course, is just kind of smiling and puts the script down, and Paul Dini is wiping a tear out of his eye. And here's a guy who was there for every second of the 20-year run of that show. He's heard everything. He created Harley Quinn, and here we are. And all it took was Kevin to riff for 2 or 3 minutes, and it just brought him to tears. It shows you the deep, deep connection that people have with certain characters. And Kevin will be the first to say, as I did, we don't draw them and we don't write them. But man, when the voice works, it is permanent. It sears itself in your soul. And it sounds a little bit dramatic, but Jesus, it is dramatic.
Yeah.
It's nothing short of that. Your boy, when you're my age and you guys are talking, there are going to be things that he recounts that you guys did together, some of which may be cartoons. And it will bring you to tears, and because it reminds you of so many different things, not the least of which is an important time that you connected with together, and it's just part of that lineage. It gets, you know, Bugs is 80 years old now, and obviously Bugs has gone through several iterations with the voice actors for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But the ethos is the same, and it's remarkable. I have to tell you, having done this work for a long time, but in the event of with the advent of social media conventions, you know, the kiboshing on them now. We're doing COVID-Con 2020, but
yeah,
the opportunity to travel around the world and meet people in person or speak with them like you, instantly around the world, you know, online, whatever, really hits home to me. It shows me, often through tears, how these characters have helped people not only just enjoy their lives or enjoy a memory or enjoy their childhood, but sometimes get them through their childhood.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes heal them through their parents' divorce, the loss of a sibling, the loss of a parent. You know, taking these DVDs of Turtles or Batman or Family Guy or Simpsons with them when they do 2 or 3 tours of duty in the Middle East. And they'll find their way to Maurice and me, stand in line for a half an hour to talk to Pinky and the Brain. And then they start to tear up because they recount how important Pinky and the Brain was to them while they were in Afghanistan. I don't even know how to tell you what that means to me.
Well, go ahead.
It's mind-blowing. It's so... Look, I've been rich and I've been poor. Which is better? But all of the stuff that culminates in the response that you get, or that I get, rather, from you when I do a character or Kevin or Mark or whatever, it's not about money. It's not about ratings. It's not about an action figure. It's not about an autograph. It is about a pure human connection to something that is uniquely human. And I cannot get enough of it. And it is a real gas to be at this stage of my life, because I can work every day, but I'm old enough to see how these characters have affected people. And my goodness, talk about a lottery winner. It's mind-blowing.
Well, I mean, like I said, it's the same for us. You know, I can attest to, you know, I did 3 deployments. I was never boots on the ground. I was a Navy guy. You know, so being separated from my wife and my son for so long.
Jesus, yeah.
You know, first 4 years of his life, I was in and out because of consistent deployments,
Sure.
just changing commands. You know, but there was always a consistent, you know, this is back, 12, no? What year is it? 2020 feels like 2 years, and I really feel like it should go down as 2 or 3 years in the books.
Oh, my God. Right? It's taken that much of a toll on us.
Yeah, it's such a bullshit year. I mean,
yeah,
it just...
it is.
I mean, it
Brutal.
could always get worse, and knock on wood, hopefully it doesn't. I
Yeah.
think this year has taken enough from everybody.
Yeah, sure.
But I can sit here and say how many times I've popped in, a Ninja Turtles DVD. I've popped in Pinky and the Brain. We would sit on the couch, in our little rooms after hours, and we would just sit there and be in tears by an episode of Pinky the Brain that we've seen hundreds and hundreds of times before, or even showing people. It was always fun showing people from different countries that have never seen this show, and then seeing that first, looking at somebody that has a reaction that you might have had or you did
Isn't
have
that
as
the
a
greatest?
child. It was fascinating. And then
Yes.
cartoons.
That's exactly what it is, Julian.
And
it's utterly fascinating.
Cartoons with you guys have just done that. I mean, how do you? Man, I can't even think on how to say that. How do you guys sit here and take? Because you said you don't draw them, you don't animate them. How do you see a voice in your head when you get a character?
Well, fortunately, there are people who do draw and animate, and so what happens is they present the actor, even at the audition stage, with a couple of different angles on a particular character: happy, sad, conversational, etc., and generally a little bit of information about how the characters interact with others in the show.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get some stuff with which to audition, different dialogue. And so obviously the visuals inform the actor's choices. Then once you get the gig, that's when the fun begins, because you get to really hone the character and work with producers, writers, animators. A perfect example, well, they all morph a little, especially if you're lucky enough to get picked up for a few seasons, because then you kind of find your stride, and animators begin to animate to the choices that the actors make over and over again to make the characters authentic and organic. But a great example of when it really works, to me, is we were talking about Carl Wheezer. That little guy has generated so many memes.
Yeah, he has.
There's just something about that little guy with his lazy L and the fact that he loves llamas and Jimmy's mom and croissants and yeah, look what happens to you. But you don't see me. You've probably seen a picture of me, but you immediately go to what Carl looks like.
Oh yeah. You
immediately in your mind you see Carl frickin' Wheezer, not Rob Paulson, and that's exactly the way it should be. I just love that part of the medium. As I said earlier, it's not hyperbole. It is magical. And when it works, like with Carl, I'm good at my job. I'm good at inhabiting a character, no better than the people we've discussed: Corey Burton, Tress McNeil, Nancy Cartwright, Danny Castellaneta, Hank Azaria. They're all wonderful. But when they start to riff in character without a script, and it's authentic, and you start saying things as Pinky or Yakko or Arthur from The Tick that Rob wouldn't say, and they're consistent with the way that the character is scripted, then you really got something. And the animators do the same thing. They start to see idiosyncrasies in the actors, and they animate to work with that. And then you really got something. Jimmy Neutron hasn't had a new episode for, 16 years or something.
That's a shame.
It doesn't matter. Well, thank you. And who knows? We're doing Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain again with Mr. Spielberg. Maybe Nickelodeon will decide to do Jimmy Neutron again. Who knows? But the point is, even without a new episode, I just joined TikTok a couple of weeks ago. And I knew that TikTok had, I don't even know how many different versions of people saying, "Are you going to finish that croissant?" Because it's just become this wacky meme. So I joined, and the first post I put was as, "Hi, it's me, and I'm really Carl Wheezer," and I did my little thing. Overnight, it got 1 million views. Overnight.
That's insane.
It is insane. But what's so gloriously insane about it is everybody who watched it watched it more than once, and shared it. And all it did was make everybody happy. I mean, it's just not just happy. I mean, palpably joyful. And a number of these kids were 12, 13, 15, people who never would have seen the originals when they were released.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't matter. You know? It's just remarkable. And I know I sound maybe to your younger listeners a little bit like, well, yeah, dude, that's the way it works. Well, I've been on the rock for 60 plus years. So this is all relatively new to me.
Mm-hmm.
But what isn't new is the fact that everybody likes to laugh. I don't care where you live. I don't care what your sexual predisposition is. I don't care what your nationality is. I don't care if you're black, white, Asian, Hispanic, gay, straight, Latvian, Russian, Argentinian. Everybody loves to laugh. I don't care if you're a world-class Nobel Prize-winning physicist or a young man or woman on the autism spectrum for whom buying a Slurpee will be a challenge.
Yeah.
But once the shiny object hits all of us, whether it's Bart Simpson or Mickey Mouse or Pinky, we all share the same joy. And it blows my mind. I keep saying that, but it does, because it's just the reason that we have to keep pushing. The reason we have to get through the bullshit that's all over us right now, all over the world. It's that it's bigger than cartoons. It is literally the spark of the human spirit that makes people want to get up the next goddamn day.
Yeah.
And and whether it's sports or joy or music, there's something about creativity that is utterly human, and it inspires people to move through their junk to find the joy in their lives. And it is very important. It's really important.
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice to sit there and, be able to veg out, disconnect, and just watch something that not only makes you feel like a kid again, but makes you feel like, oh, man, I forgot about getting fired. I forgot about a flat tire, you know? So it's something that you're saying that it just resonates so well. What character do you think, every character you've done at least, what character do you think more people resonate with? Do you think it's Yakko or Pinky or Carl, or who do you get asked about most?
I probably Turtle, simply because it's been a fixture in the culture of the world now for, arguably, 25, close to 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
I could argue that there are places, I don't, have any empirical data to support my theory, but I could make I think a serious argument that there might be places on the planet I could go, or someone else could go, and if you asked 100 people, did they know who Brad Pitt is, most of them would say yes, but all of them arguably would say, Ninja Turtles? Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Whether it's in Hungarian or Filipino. It is that big. Same with Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Same with Bart Simpson.
Batman, Coca-Cola.
Batman, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That national recognition.
Totally. And I have to say that Raphael is not dissimilar to my own vibe, because I'm a bit of a smartass, and I rely on my wit to get me work, and it's served me really well, and I've cultivated it. I've been surrounded by people way better at it than I. Phil Hartman, Paul Rubens, Tress McNeil, and Maurice LaMarche, and Welker, and Billy DiMaggio, people who are all so smart, and they've made me raise my game. So I think that probably is the one, simply because of its inarguably iconic status around the world. However, Yakko is a big deal because of the music. I was a singer before I became an actor, and I lived the axiom vis-a-vis Animaniacs.
Mm-hmm.
that luck is when opportunity meets preparation, because I love to sing, and I would sing and create characters for no other reason than it just made my soul happy. When I was 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, and I just dug it. And then I would record them and keep them and drag them out and use them again, just for fun. And here I am all of a sudden at 36 years old, auditioning for a show with Steven Spielberg, and there would be, a song at every half hour, and I'm going to be the lead, and can I sing in character? And turns out I can. And, man, I don't even know how many times people have wanted me to sing United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Haiti, Jamaica, Peru. And it's a goddamned amazing 2.5-minute piece of brilliant American art. It is. It's a gloriously brilliant, concise, smart cartoon.
Oh, hands
anybody
down.
who watches it, anybody who watches it, regardless of the fact that it's in English, their mouths just, the first time they see it, they go, "Oh my God, how did that happen?" And I'm a good singer, but I live in Hollywood, Julian. You can throw a dart and you're a good singer here. What you can't do is throw a dart and hit somebody who can write that stuff.
Yeah.
Randy Rogel, still to this day, is a better writer now than he was when he wrote that song 30 years ago or 25 years ago. And it was one of the reasons that Mr. Spielberg decided to call Maurice LaMarche and Randy and myself and Tress MacNeille and Jess Harnell and say, "Hey, you guys want to do this again?" I mean, when the King of Hollywood at 73 years old calls up a bunch of rank-and-file actors, none of us are movie stars. The characters are stars. But Steven is sort of the world's most famous geek. He understands the nature of celebrity, and that even though he could call Liam Neeson to be the brain, it's not about that. It's about the authenticity of the characters. And if Maurice and I can still do the brain and Pinky respectively, he'd be an idiot to not hire us.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I've seen the new stuff. Oh my God, it's freaking amazing.
I can't wait to see it.
Oh,
I mean,
me neither.
Is it? I usually save this type of stuff for the end, because I always reach out on social media to a whole bunch of different groups, and whoever I'm interviewing, I always say, "Hey, if you could ask insert name here." We're talking to Rob Paulson today, so we're going to say, "Hey, if you could ask Rob any one question," like I said, usually leave it for the end, but I want to ask this one now because I think I end up forgetting. When a listener by the name of Sam, I can't pronounce his last name, so I'm sorry, Sam, wanted to know, did you ever pass out doing that song?
No, as I said, I was a trained singer before I moved to LA, and I did not. I'll tell you what we did do, though, is we did it in one take.
What?
And,
That's insane.
Yeah, we did 2 takes, and the one that you grew up and Sam grew up listening to, and the one that's got, 50 million views online, it was the first take, and that's what the producer, Tom Ruger, chose to use. But again, it sounds more impressive than it is in terms of my part of it. I had a week to work on it. I had the music in front of me. And the way the song is constructed, the way the song is composed, is just brilliant. And so I was not the least bit nervous. I was excited. It was the first song I recorded for Animaniacs. And I remember bringing it home in the house we're in now, working on it. And I had my headphones in and listening to a cassette, Cassette. Thank you very much. And my wife said, "What is that?" And I said, "Check this out." And I showed her the music. I said, "This is pretty much every country in the world, and it's rhymed." And she said, "Who wrote that?" I said, "This guy named Randy Rogel." But here's a little inside baseball that I love to tell about that song, because, as I said, it's the first song that Randy wrote for Animaniacs, the first song that I recorded for Animaniacs, and right out of the chute, it became, a classic. But here's the deal. Randy Rogel is the single most overachieving human I've ever had the great good fortune, privilege to have in my circle. West Point grad, then he went to Boston University, another degree, I think in international finance, whatever. Then he goes to work in corporate America, making a nice six-figure income after he's done serving the country as a lieutenant. And his whole background before West Point was musical comedy, theater, writing, just a really talented guy in terms of his performance acumen.
Does he sleep?
He pretty much, well, when he's dead, he says, someday. But so he's working up the coast for Procter & Gamble in Seattle, I believe. And the pull, the lure of Hollywood was too much for him. He's making six figures at, 28, 30 years old, and says, I got to go try this. I'm not, I will never know if I don't try it. He goes down to Hollywood, bangs around for a while, got a bunch of spec scripts, lands a gig writing for Batman, the animated series. Alan Burnett hires him. They're still best friends to this day, with me too. And he wins an Emmy his first year writing for Batman.
Jesus Christ.
Then he hears about Tom Ruegger, the creator of Tiny Toon Adventures, and Steven Spielberg are going to do a new show from a clean sheet of paper, musical variety show called Animaniacs, all about music. 35-piece orchestra every half hour. Original songs for every half hour. So Randy says, oh my God, that's what I'm about, and bangs on the door. And of course, everybody at Batman says, what the hell's the matter with you? Just keep writing and winning Emmys. We're going to pay you more money. He says, no, I know, but I'm not just a drama guy. So check this out, folks. Finally, Tom Ruegger says, all right, write me a spec song and come on in next week and play it for me on my little piano in my office here. So Randy walks in, and folks, the song he had for his audition piece was Yakko's World.
Jesus Christ.
Yes, exactly. That's what he had in his back pocket. And it just got better and better and better from there. And now, Randy and I, when we don't have COVID, we take the music of Animaniacs around the country and do Animaniacs in concert. And now Randy has written a handful of songs for the new show. And he's better now than he was 25 years ago. It's typical of artists who, or athletes. Sadly, athletes can't do what painters or magicians or actors or singers can do. Mm-hmm. They're done by the time if they're lucky, they go to 35, or Tom Brady's case, 43. That's rare.
Yeah.
But songwriters, authors, you see my point. Oh, yeah. Paul Newman said that he died, I think, about 80. But he said, you know what, as an actor, I don't think I really started to get it till I was about 70. And that's great news for people like me and people who are in their 40s. But Randy is just like that. He never stops. It's all about polishing the diamond. It's all about not resting on your laurels. David Copperfield is the same way. He's the same age as I. And when he's, doing a show, and he can in Vegas, he does 15 shows a week. The guy's worth literally $1 billion. It's not about that. It's about how do I blow people's minds and my own at the same time. What have I not done yet? And and Steven Spielberg, same thing.
It's that innovative gene.
To have those people in my life and to be able to emulate them and see how they move through their lives. I have a master class in the nature of how a Hollywood legend gets older and how they move through their lives. I get to see it firsthand, and it's extraordinary. All of the people I mentioned at that level have this undeniable not only spirit of creativity that transcends money, age, social status, all that, but they have a grace about them that is palpable. They're really, seriously, Julian, really decent, kind, nice people. They understand how powerful they are, and they understand that if they say something the wrong way or look at someone the wrong way, even if it wasn't intended to be harmful, it can be construed that way. So they understand the power of their own, the responsibility of their own power.
Yeah.
And so they make it about you. They inevitably take the time to discuss whatever it is, a new movie, an Oscar, whatever they've done, but they make it about the person speaking to them, because they treat them as though they are important. They are as important as the person to whom they're speaking perceives them to be. It's the same with Gordie Howe, Al Kaline, people I got to know that were my heroes, sports heroes. They all share that incredible sense of responsibility for their own power. And it makes people just want to work with them. And then they go out of their way to work really hard. And then that informs the genius of a guy like Steven, because part of his genius is knowing whom to hire and turning them loose. And because he knows that he commands that kind of respect and he doesn't have to ask for it. It's remarkable to watch. And it is innate in all the great people I've had the good fortune of meeting. It's a great thing to watch. It's incredible.
Well, I mean, just hearing all of these people that I've just watched. I mean, Steven Spielberg, right off the bat, knocks it out of the park with Jaws. I mean, I think he had either one movie or one. It's been I'm a little rusty on my Spielberg knowledge. Yeah, they had a podcast on Jaws.
Yeah, he did Sugarland Express, and he had done an episode of Night Gallery. He did a TV movie with Dennis Weaver called Duel. That was watch that, kids. It's a movie about a guy who's driving a car, and he somehow gets in front of an 18-wheeler on a road, and the 18-wheeler starts forcing him off the road. Mm-hmm. It's brilliant. I mean, just unbelievable. And he directed Jaws at, I don't know, what was it, 28 years old or something?
Yeah,
like
I don't even think he was close to 30 at that point. I mean,
yeah.
when you talk about overachievers, Steven Spielberg is up there. I mean, that's my kid's favorite. Jaws is my kid's favorite. And living in Florida, you would think, it scared the hell out of my younger brother. He wouldn't sit on a toilet. He wouldn't take a bath. He had the door open and he had the curtains open. He was like, "You watching me, Mommy? You watching me?" And then, flash forward 20 years, my kid sees this movie for the first time. We were a little, iffy. My wife more than me,
Sure.
reasonably so. Doesn't want to get him nightmares or anything like that. But
he
loved the
and
sharks.
What's so great about it is it's timeless. We all know it looks like, there are scenes when it looks like a fake shark. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter, Julian.
Nope.
It doesn't matter. That is when his art, his artistry, and others, Bob Zemeckis, obviously Alfred Hitchcock, mm-hmm. Stanley Kubrick, on and on and on and on and on. Irrespective of the time when some movies are made, they are utterly timeless.
Oh yeah.
And Jaws is a perfect example. Perfect example. And that's what makes Mr. Spielberg so unique. There are a handful of people who have that ability to be prescient enough to do a piece of art that is not only enjoyable and relevant in the time in which it was made or the times it reflects its era. Saving Private Ryan, War Horse, but the artistry is such that it doesn't matter. I can watch Mr. Smith Goes to Washington now, and it's 70 years, 60 years. Who cares?
Yeah.
It's Frank Capra, man. And it's just, as they say, it is what it is. And it's not an accident. Once it happens over and over again, not all of them are going to be knocked out of the park. But it's not an accident when it happens in your 30s and your 40s and your 50s and your 60s and your 70s. You know, David Lean directed The English Patient when he was 80-something.
Mm-hmm.
Shut up! You know, it's and that's what the good news is for performers and for creators. It stops only when you want to stop or when you die. That's it.
Well,
and I'm so grateful.
It's crazy that you never know when you're going to hit. I mean, I'm a pretty big stand-up comedian fan, and Rodney Dangerfield has always been in my top 5. And what
God bless you.
He didn't hit it until 52, 53 when he brought that whole no respect line. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah. In fact, my buddy the Bang, my dear brother Maurice LaMarche, and Sam Kinison, they all were on Rodney Dangerfield's Young Comedian special.
Yep.
And they used to open for Rodney on the road. They would be, you know, Maurice and Sam would open for Rodney. A couple other guys, too, I think, were on the show. But here's how classy Rodney was. Maurice has recounted the story more than once in which Maurice was opening for Rodney at Caesars. And Maurice had brought his folks in from Toronto to see him opening. You know, that's at Caesars, man, on the Las Vegas Strip with Rodney.
Mm-hmm.
And so Maurice gets to his dressing room the opening night, and Rodney's, you know, yelling at somebody on the phone. And it was unusual. Rodney was not, according to Maurice, I didn't have the pleasure of meeting him. I got to see him a few times, you know, in concert. But Mo was with him for a year. Actually more than a year, every day. And it was unusual for him to be so bent out of shape. And what Rodney was yelling at was whomever the producer, or whomever the person responsible for the marquee was, because Maurice's name wasn't on it.
That's classy.
And he was just like, wait a minute, God damn it, this kid has worked his ass off. He's flown his fucking parents out. Oops, sorry.
No, you're fine. No, you're perfectly fine.
His word. He's flown his effing parents out here. You get his name on that goddamn marquee, or I'm not going on. Now, that tells you all you need to know.
Oh, yeah.
About the work ethic of a guy like Rodney, or his real name was Roy. I forgot.
Jacob
Roy something.
Jacob Cohen.
Jacob Roy, I think. Yeah, that's what it was. Jake Roy or something like that.
Yeah, Jack Roy.
Jack Roy. Thank you. Yeah, Jacob Cohen was his birth name, but Jack Roy. Thank you. Yeah. But you see my point. And now, the number of times that I've seen Maurice LaMarche, not angry, but what's the word I'm looking for? But
unhappy.
Focused.
Okay.
Yeah, and saying, no. This person was in line first, or no, don't shut the line down. Yeah, but you got to catch a plane. Well, we'll catch a later plane. We still got 30 people here, and the reason they're still in line is because I have spoken maybe a little bit too long to the people in front of the line.
Yeah.
Because they deserve, you know, my attention, and the next 30 folks do as well. You think for one freaking minute I'm going to send them home without their brain autograph? Of course not. Well, I'll get another plane. And I've seen it, I don't care, time and time, and not just from Maurice, but Mo learned. And when you are able to see, as I said earlier, how people who could behave any way they want and get away with it, but they choose to be kind, thoughtful, giving, empathic, you just learn, oh my God, if you're lucky enough to cultivate anything resembling celebrity, hotshot, that's how you behave. And Mo is the real deal because of guys like Rodney.
It's funny, you mentioned Sam Kinison, and you know, he cracks my top 10 as far as all-time comedians go. But
Oh yeah.
I didn't know he was a comedian. Like when I was younger, I was pretty much left to my own devices. Watch cartoons, TV. I was real. I don't want to say a latchkey kid, but I didn't spend as much time as the kids spend inside these days because between
Sure.
basketball and friends and just doing
Yeah.
stuff, you never were home. But I remember sitting in my stepfather Pete, or ex stepfather, I guess. I don't know what they're really called at this point, but he had this huge movie collection. And this is where I saw my first Steven Seagal movie, and I saw my first Rodney Dangerfield movie, which started out as Ladybugs, and then it had went to, what was it, Back to School, I think was his. Back to School
Oh
was
yeah.
his other big one, and that's where I saw Sam
Uh-huh.
Kinison for the first time as his teacher. I think he was, what kind of teacher was he? He was just a professor. I can't remember what the class was, but I just remember him going
Yeah.
like, "Oh my God, this dude is hilarious." Find out, that he's a comedian, and then shortly after, I find out that he's been, sadly dead. Drunk driver hit him and killed
Sure.
him, years after. So it was like, Rodney hit it at 53. This dude was just starting to come into his own. He was
Yeah.
just starting to be him, and then it was just lights out. No more.
Sure.
And it's
No,
crazy
it's
seeing that.
heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mo. We did an episode of Pinky and the Brain, and we had to do it the day of Sam's funeral.
Yeah.
And I remember Mo coming in after the funeral, and typical pro, it was brokenhearted. They were very close. But man, when it came time to be the brain, he just laid it down, and nobody was any the wiser, even though we were all, trying to help him
Yeah.
deal with it. But man, what a pro! As soon as the first take fired up, he killed it, just like he would have done on a live stand-up gig.
Yeah.
The professionalism of the people who are my personal friends transcends show business. They would be like that if they owned a Subway franchise. They're just decent, hardworking, thoughtful, kind people who just happen to be the most talented humans that have ever drawn a breath.
Yeah, I mean,
Crazy.
it's crazy what real, I always say it comes down not so much to the mom or the dad, it's collective. It's putting in those, building a house, laying that foundation. Just to be a good human being, a good person, laying
Exactly
that
right.
foundation. It's so nice
Exactly
to see
right,
that
Julian.
it's all over the place and in the places you don't expect it, because you always hear horror stories. I've had a couple, not with so much as celebrities, but I mean, I guess they're celebrities, but sports athletes and stuff like that, or comic book writers. So it is a breath of fresh air seeing people at the top of that list, or the top of the food chain, if you will.
Yeah.
Just raised right at the end of the day. Or cares. It's always
Yeah.
always nice seeing you get that person you're interviewing, you're talking to might not remember you a year from now, but you will never forget that one time you got to talk to enter name here.
Absolutely.
You know.
Absolutely right. And I remember, because my sports hero growing up in Michigan was Gordie Howe, and I played hockey. Still go around and bang around with my buddies every now and then. But I had the great good fortune of getting to know Mr. and Mrs. Howe very well, playing in celebrity charity hockey games. And I remember Gordie went from being my idol as a sports guy to my hero in 5 seconds. I was sitting next to him at a charity softball. It was a part of the charity softball event up in Vancouver one summer, and I was there signing Ninja Turtle stuff to all the kids, and he was signing everything that wasn't nailed down. He was a national treasure. And I'll never forget this, Julie. A young man came up. We'd been waiting in line for an hour to get Gordie's autograph. And Gordie at that time was about 65. Probably signed literally 1 million autographs by that time in his life. And the young man gave him the puck. Gordie signed it. And he said, "Thank you so much, Mr. Howe. Your hand must be getting really tired." And Gordie said the following, and it has been my mantra since then. He put his Sharpie down. He looked at that young man. He said, "It's my pleasure, son. I've worked too hard for this privilege."
Yeah.
And, I mean, exactly what I'm doing now. I just thought, oh, my goodness. Here's
Comes
Gordie
full
Howe,
circle.
Wayne Gretzky's idol. And the hockey player is hockey player. Um, and he still treats his profound celebrity the way he would because he's a Saskatchewan farm boy. And I will never, ever forget that, because what you're kind enough to do with me today, Julian, is a privilege. You're talking to me because you're interested in what I have to say, because I've been paid really well to do what used to get me in trouble in 7th grade. and it is a privilege. None of this should be taken for granted. So, when these opportunities come up to shine light on how great, truly great people are, and you get to see a little inside baseball about why they're so great, it often has nothing to do with their art. Their art is their expression of creativity, but they're just excellent humans. And it's important for people to know that.
I couldn't say it. Like I said, it's so refreshing, right? Because we've all had that brush with somebody that just left a bad taste in your mouth. They always say never meet your heroes.
Always. Oh yeah.
But the way I look at it, I'm batting at least 98%. I've only met like one or two people, and maybe they just had a bad. I've had bad days, and
of course.
I'm nothing compared to say like a LeBron James or Michael Jordan, where he's getting asked left and right for
Every
this,
day.
that, So right. I put that into one of those categories where like, maybe the next time when we talk, maybe he'll have had a coffee.
Of course.
Maybe he'll have had a hot dog for lunch. Maybe he was a little parched or hungry, But
yep.
That's neither here nor there, But it's always nice when you get to meet a hero, and then
Absolutely.
you feel like a kid again, or you feel like, oh shit, I haven't missed a beat, or he hasn't missed a beat, or she hasn't missed a beat. So it's always
right.
nice seeing that. And you said
That's
Gordie
exactly
Howe
right.
was your hero. Do you have any other guys when you were growing up that was like, oh man, this guy is like at the top of my list, that he's just my guy, or a girl?
Oh yeah, well, performance-wise, Peter Sellers, Jonathan Winters, whom I got to work with half a dozen times, just mind-blowing, completely tweaked, but just an incredible gift. Al Kaline, the Detroit Tigers, lots of hockey players. Bobby Orr from the Boston Bruins, I got to meet him a couple times. Exactly the same vibe as Gordie. Just, it's about you.
Yeah.
So many performers, many of whom I got to work with now, but honestly, a lot of my heroes have turned out to be my friends. Frank Welker is one of them. Billy West, Maurice LaMarche, Tress MacNeille I've known since she was a cocktail waitress and hadn't even had a job. And now she is the most prolific voice actress in the history of Hollywood. And she gets better every day. Mark Hamill. I saw Star Wars long before I knew him. And, the times he'd come to my kid's birthday party or write a lovely blurb from my book, just really genuine. He and his wife, Mary Lou. So many of my showbiz heroes are people with whom I've grown up.
Yeah.
And I get to see them. I've watched their stars rise, and I see how they behave. Just like Stephen, just like Gordie, just like Jack Nicklaus, other great, Terry Ellis is a great friend. And he's so damn freaking handsome. It's off-putting. But he's just the kindest, sweetest, most genuine, effusive guy. And I get to watch how these people move through their lives. And they're great for a reason. And it ain't just about their talent.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't say it any better than what you said it. Now, we are reaching the end of the time. End of our time, because I don't want to keep you up too long. I know we're going a little bit over that hour allotted.
Problem.
But there is three things really that I want to hit on. You have a book come out, your memoirs, called Voice Lessons. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can. 4 years ago at this time, I was recovering from stage 3 throat cancer. And fortunately, I have a remarkable wife and son and daughter-in-law who knew precisely before I did what to do to help me.
Mm-hmm.
I was cured. The treatment was brutal. I knew it would be, but I'm fine. And the book is not a compendium of, and then I did, and then I won an Emmy, and then I won a Peabody, and then you know me from. I didn't want to write that. The last thing the world needs is another celebrity memoir from a non-celebrity.
Yeah.
And again, it's not false modesty. The characters are famous. But once I had throat cancer, I had a much more important story to tell. And that's what the book is about. It really is an excellent example of the power of joy and kindness and empathy and courage, and how I've learned through other children who all these characters have spoken to when they were undergoing debilitating diseases, and many of these children had not made it. And their parents kept in touch with me and reminded me of all this joy and courage that was inside of me in the guise of these characters. And it's an important story. And it illustrates what we've been talking about and what you've been kind enough for me to share with your audience. So it's an important book in that regard. It's not ever going to be a New York Times bestseller list, but as a result of the success of all these characters and the fact that the voice behind them had throat cancer makes for a pretty interesting story. And the fact that I'm back doing it now at a high level with the King of Hollywood after, 35 or 40 consecutive days of radiation and chemotherapy and losing 50 pounds and not being able to taste food anymore and all of that. But I'm back. That's the story. And how that relates to other people who may hear that story just like I did and say, you know what, I can handle this because so-and-so, this young man or woman who didn't make it, but their courage in dealing with the end of their lives and their parents dealing with the aftermath of that and reminding me of my part, or rather Yakko's or Raphael's or Donatello's part in it, that's the story. And so the book is a really important thing for me. I appreciate you bringing it up.
Oh, no, it's not a problem. You kind of censored yourself a little while ago when you dropped an F-bomb, but fuck cancer, really. I mean,
Thank you.
I had a sister that had breast cancer. She luckily beat it a few years. Well, it's 2020. Like I said, it keeps feeling like this is 2-3 years this fucking year. But, she beat it, a few years back, which we were super excited. It was the scariest time, of our lives, because we've had so many people that we've known, whether it be friends, family, friends of family, that type of thing, that have just went away with this disease. It's such a shitty disease. And you've got such an amazing way of looking at this. I would have been, bitter. How can you give the guy that everybody knows their voice? There's two people that come to mind. Rob Paulson gets throat cancer. Luckily, I'm so happy you beat it. And then you give, if you're a wrestling fan, comic books and everything like that generally go hand in hand with wrestlers, because that's what comic books are, and that's what wrestlers are. They're superhero people, but in real life. And then a great, probably top 4, top 5 greatest wrestler of all time, Bobby the Brain Heenan. He's succumbed to brain cancer. I think it's been 3-4 years now at this point. He was the greatest talker of all time in wrestling, and to give the greatest voice in my opinion in cartoon history, you go through 50, 60, 100 years, whatever it is from now, there's never gonna be another Rob Paulson, man. I cannot thank you enough for doing this. I do know that you are working. I don't know if it's so much a spokesperson or if you are the what's the word? What's a better word than spokesperson? Or the face?
I'm the spokestune. Yeah, I'm the spokestune for the Head and Neck Cancer Alliance. Thank you for bringing that up, Julian.
Oh, no problem.
Headandneck.org. I was fortunate enough to be tapped to be the spokesperson this year, I've had some big shoes to fill. Another throat cancer survivor and absolute hero who had dealt with it and was the spokesperson before me, Jim Kelly, the Hall of Fame quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, who really took a pounding from the same type of cancer. But man, we know he's got a gun for an arm. We know why he's in the hall. But his heroism is not about football. You should see this badass guy who's lost all this weight, had the part of his, the roof of his mouth removed, and stands up there in front of anybody who wants to hear it, talking about what it takes to get through cancer and how powerful these young children, men and women are, who are getting the daylights beat out of them.
Yeah.
But they get up every day, and that's why Jim Kelly's a hero. And so I am thrilled to be in that, have that same gig this year, and folks can learn an awful lot about HPV-related throat cancer and head and neck cancer if they go to headandneck.org. And it can be devastating, but it's very treatable. Very treatable. And now there are vaccines available for both young men and young women. There are preventative vaccines against this type of cancer. So not only will they not contract it, they won't have to go through a pretty brutal treatment, which right now is the gold standard. But trust me, if you don't have to go through it, you don't want it.
Yeah.
And so please go and check out headandneck.org and Gardasil, the vaccine for young men and women to prevent them from contracting HPV-related head and neck cancers in their later lives. It's definitely worth a look.
Yes, sir. I mean, we're going to wrap it up. Excuse me. We're going to wrap it up here. Like I said, sir, you've been such an inspiration, since like at 31 years old. And I can name you just off the top of my head 5 or 6 characters that will be with me I will forget so much shit by the time I get to however old I get. But I will never, ever forget Raphael, Donatello. I will never forget Carl Wheezer and his love for croissants. I will never, ever, I will never forget it. And I can't thank you enough. You can find Mr. Paulson over on Twitter at Yakko Pinky. Is it just Rob_Paulsen for Instagram?
That's correct. Rob_Paulsen. And as you said, at Yakko Pinky, one word, YAKKOPINKY. And Rob Paulson 311 on TikTok. That's my birthday. Rob Paulson, Paulsen 311 on TikTok. And Rob Paulson, voice actor, on Facebook.
Well, that's all the place. If you guys are not following them yet, what the hell are you waiting for?